Okay, let's file this story under the stories that I wouldn't believe it had I had not seen it and read it myself. This is a story from out in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. One of the fellas goes in and kills a 95-year-old white guy. The guy can't see or he can't hear. Here comes the weird part. He goes into court. His lawyer says, well, Your Honor, when you sentence my client for killing that guy, beating him, we have to remember that the person grew up, he was black. Then the guy goes, yeah, hey, I'm sorry about killing that guy, but here's why I did it. He launched into a 5-minute explanation of how this guy who he killed, the old white guy he killed, was really a representative figure for all the white people who have mistreated black people all over the world. So that's I guess that's my complaint number one about this video you're about to see, is that nobody ever finishes or makes the complete excuse. I don't mind excuses, but they have to say the whole thing. So it would say something like this. I killed that 95-year-old white dude, World War II veteran, who can't see, can't hear. I killed him because he represents other white people who mistreated black people. Let's learn a little bit about this guy. Let's learn a little bit about how his family is reacting.
Your Honor, thank you for this time in your courtroom. Life is about decisions. My father made decisions. He made decisions to build a good life, enter to Albany, Minnesota. He had a lunch, a fishing pole, and a gunny sack. His job during the day was to catch fish to take home in the gunny sack. His father picked him up in the evening on his way home from work. He joined the National Guard. He built a career and a hobby as a radio operator. He made a home and raised a family with our mother in a marriage of 60 years. He saved, tinkered, and fixed about anything to do with woodworking, electronics, and mechanical items. One time I needed an unusual part to repair a lamp. I asked him if he had ever seen such a thing. He went out into his garage and pulled out a whole drawer full of old lamp parts. And there in his salvage collection was the obscure piece that I needed. Some of us in the family would parody him in a good-natured way because he saved so many things and praised the craftsmanship of those old codgers who made the item he was repurposing. But this was another way of his teaching us. He was saying, if you pay attention to what you're doing, you can learn. And you can learn from the past and apply what you learned to other issues in life. This is a picture of him in April of 2016 at age 94. This was during maple syrup making. He couldn't do much of the work anymore, but you can see his joy and enthusiasm at being there in front of the sap cookers that he constructed. This is the father I grew up with and who influenced me. He was always working, building, taking responsibility for his life, and trying to make good decisions. What has Isaiah Thomas done with his life? What types of decisions has he made? Isaiah Thomas beat a vulnerable old man who had little eyesight left and was hard of hearing. He beat my dad, left his body sprawled in his bedroom, and then went through his home taking items to pawn. Then he called a friend to get a ride home and went to a casino later that evening. This murder was an intersection of two opposite lives. A man who had devoted his life to providing, raising a family, and taking responsibility, and a person who stole property and damaged lives. I will always be jarred that my father experienced such a violation of his person and a callous, cold ending. Isaiah Thomas took a life and lost the right to keep his. He should be kept out of society for as long as legally possible.
It was a home invasion that took a violent turn as Isaiah Thomas will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars for killing Al Leyline.
Fox 9's Paul Bloom live at the Anoka County Courthouse. Paul, this was a violent act of rage.
Jeff, the words I kept hearing today, senseless and cowardly. We are talking about a 95-year-old victim who could barely see, barely could hear, viciously attacked and killed in the home he had lived in for 67 years. And it was all over a couple of trinkets the killer hoped to pawn and make some money.
This calculated behavior demonstrates the mentality of a violent sociopath.
One by one, Al Leyline's family lashed out at the man who killed their beloved father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, Isaiah Montrell Thomas.
Isaiah Thomas took a life and lost the right to keep his.
Al's oldest daughter, Linda Fenwick, recalled discovering her father's viciously beaten body in his own home Thanksgiving weekend 2016.
Never in a million years did we think we had to protect Dad from the scum of the earth who would kill an innocent, vulnerable, aging man in his own home while robbing him of a few coins.
Full stop, right there. How many times on this channel have we begged people to keep an eye on their grandparents, their mom or their dad, their brother, their sister, their aunt or uncle? How many times have we begged people to do that in places like St. Paul, where one of the fellas lives a few blocks away, comes over, and now this lady goes, man, I didn't have any idea. Listen, lady, I'm sorry your father's dead. But please, on this channel, we do not listen to relatives who say they didn't have any idea what was happening because you and people in the St. Paul, Minneapolis area were too busy sticking their head in the sand. This also raises the stakes for YouTube and Facebook, right? This is why I got kicked off of YouTube 5 times for calling this kind of stuff out. And if YouTube had not kicked us off, maybe that old dude wouldn't have died at the hands of one of the fellas. Yeah, let's finish up this clip.
Thomas, who lived in an apartment close by, has admitted he broke into Leyline's house about 1.5 years ago. And Thomas told the court Monday he snapped uncontrollably.
The truth is, it was a warm-blooded action of deep, bone-deep, misplaced anger. But for clarification's sake, I take ownership of what I've done.
Thomas, a career criminal with 11 prior felony convictions, apologized in court, explaining that his lot in life, growing up poor and black, led to the murderous encounter. The Leylines, though, not buying a word of it.
This soulless person who murdered Dad should never be allowed to walk the face of the earth again.
And as you heard the judge at the top of our coverage, the sentence for Isaiah Thomas for his first-degree guilty murder plea, life in prison. He does get the possibility at parole after 30 years, though the Leylines promised today that Al's army of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are already lined up to be at any future parole hearings to make sure Isaiah Thomas never sees the light of day.
So that's St. Paul, Minneapolis area. That's the Twin Cities. That's where racism is so bad, black people have to go around killing all white people because, well, that's what they do. The punchline of the story is this dude's going to go to prison for life, of course. No, that's not an of course. He says when he gets to prison, he wants to mentor young black people when he's in prison. Good Lord, the narcissism, the sociopathy, all the other ridiculous terms for people that are just terribly, terribly sick with this racial hostility and racial violence and the amount of damage it's doing. I mean, it's hard to even get our mind around it anymore. Especially if you're one of those kids, people like the lady in that clip we saw, especially if you're like one of those people who just don't want to make the black kids angry.